We're working to connect a region of over 600 mil bridges between our lands.
Hello, Malma Angeles. We're moving to the next stage of the pandemic, and as the world resets to the new normal, we find ourselves seeking the right balance between health and livelihood, constantly adjusting the boundaries between liberty and responsibility. Welcome to ASEAN in Focus. First, another police officer died of the coronavirus disease, bringing the police force's death toll from the disease to 13. In a statement, PNP spokesperson Brigadier General Bernard Bannock said the latest fatality is a 46-year-old policeman assigned at the National Capital Region Police. He passed away on Tuesday. Mr. Bannock said as of Wednesday night, the number of COVID-19 infections among policemen has reached 2,732 as the PNP Health Service reported 111 new confirmed cases, most of whom came from the NCRPO. A total of 1,800 personnel have recovered from the disease, while the health service is also monitoring 764 probable cases and 2,202 suspected cases. NCRPO Chief Major General Debold Sinas meanwhile said the police officer died at City Reyes Hospital in Tanawan City in Batangas. He is the third NCRPO personnel who died of COVID-19. He said the NCRPO is coordinating with the Tanawan Police for the, or 13th rather, police for the initial assistance and support for the bereaved family. Maldives establishes a PCR sampling station to test passengers departing from live aboards. To tell us more about that and to explain more, here's Steffi Dewan. Hello, Steffi.
Hi, Alma.
Hello, Steffi. Good to see you back.
Yes. So here's the latest update from the island country of Maldives. The National Boarding Association of Maldives, or NBAM, on Tuesday announced the establishment of PCR sampling station in the reclaimed suburb of Hulhumale to test passengers departing from live boards for COVID-19. Following a recommendation submitted by NBAM to the Ministry of Tourism and Housing Development Corporation, or HDC, the sampling station was set up in the jetty area of Hulhumale as a collective effort joined by the Health Protection Agency and Maldives Police Service. While overall efforts to establish the facility was completed within the 5-day period, the first sample was collected on August 10th. NBAM urged live board operators to schedule sample collection in advance to ensure that the station has a sufficient time period to confirm test results before tourists depart. In order to pre-book testing, passengers' details must be sent to email at info@boating.mb. In a circular issued on August 10, the Tourism Ministry instructed vessels currently operating or cruising across Maldives to coordinate with focal points such as regional hospitals to arrange sample collections and testing for passengers. Safari vessels are required to maintain a stock of test kits and finalize sample transportation arrangement through atoll collection points of other means of transport. The Tourism Ministry also urged all testing facilities to ensure that tourists who required a negative PCR test results to board departure flights are transferred to the airport only after results are handed over. All such facilities are instructed to adhere to COVID-19 safety guidelines. Following nearly 4 months of lockdown, Maldives reopened its borders to international passengers on July 15. At present, tourists are permitted to enter the country without conducting tests or observing mandatory quarantine, provided that they remain at the facility where the initial bookings were made. Therefore, tourists are not permitted to move between islands or live boards within the duration of their stay. All holidaymakers arriving in Maldives are required to observe social distancing measures and wear face masks as per guideline issued by HTA. While passengers are required to undergo thermal screening at the airport, individuals with high temperatures, breathing difficulties, For other symptoms, will be referred to the airport clinic. Back to you, Alma.
All right. Thank you, Steffi, for your updates there in the beautiful islands of Maldives. Thank you, Steffi.
Thank you so much, Alma. Reporting live from What Ifs. This is Stephanie Huan, and we live in interesting times.
Okay, from Maldives, we go to Vietnam. Let's get the latest situation there from Chriselle Lacuna, joining us live. Hello, Chriselle.
Hello, Alma. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon. Go ahead.
Yes. For the latest COVID-19 update, 3 new COVID-19 infection cases reported. Patient tally rises to 883. Vietnam confirmed 3 more COVID-19 cases this morning, including 1 imported case in Bac Lieu province, raising the country's patient tally to 883. Also, the Ministry of Health reports 18 COVID-19 deaths this morning. The latest death is a 52-year-old female resident of Cam Le district in Da Nang, known as the country's biggest COVID-19 hotspot. Of the country's patient tally, 409 have recovered, accounting for 46.3%. Let's go over our headline. Nearly 16 million downloads for Vietnamese COVID-19 tracing app. As of August 11, as many as 15.7 million people downloaded Blue Zone, a domestically developed contract tracing mobile app to identify and alert people who have interacted with COVID-19 patients, according to the Ministry of Information and Communications. The figure witnessed an increase of 15.1 million compared to the number recorded as of July 25. Around 1 million Vietnamese people have installed the app each day. Da Nang City, the nation's biggest COVID-19 hotspot, took the lead among localities with 34.13% of smartphone users installing the app, followed by Hanoi, 23.83%, Quang Ninh Province, 22.61%, Ho Chi Minh City, 22.05%, and Bac Ninh Province, 17.84%. A total number of 4.8 million Blue Zone users have been recorded in these 5 localities. Thanks to the app, the health sector detected 21 cases who had contact with previously announced COVID-19 patients. Ministry of Information and Communications, Win Man Hong, said that localities should enhance communications on Blue Zone among local people to take full advantages of the app. The active Blue Zone users out of Vietnam's 76.8 million smartphone users. The smartphone app Blue Zone relies on Bluetooth signal to log when 2 users are near each other information that can later be used for contact tracing for COVID-19 cases. So far, that is the update from Vietnam, Alma.
All right. Thank you, Chriselle, for joining us today, and thank you for your updates there. Thank you, EBC, Vietnam Bureau.
Thank you so much, Alma. Reporting live from Ho Chi Minh City, this is Chriselle Lacuna. We live in interesting times.
Okay, staying in Vietnam, the lockdown hospital in Da Nang has already reopened. Ralph Randolph, Empire reports.
Barriers in the lockdown rehabilitation and orthopedics hospital and 3 sections of streets surrounding the hospital were removed early on Tuesday morning. Doctors, nurses, and more than 3,000 residents of the streets celebrated the reopening of the hospital and the living quarters in the downtown area. It's the second hospital in the lockdown zone that has been reopened after C Hospital last weekend. Nearly 400 doctors, nurses, and patients at the hospital have tested negative for SARS-CoV-2 3 times. However, doctors, nurses, and residents in the lockdown zone will self-isolate at home for 2 more weeks to ensure they are completely free from coronavirus infection, according to the city's Center for Disease Center, or CDC. The lockdown will remain at Da Nang General Hospital after 2 weeks of isolation, and the closure will be kept till the last COVID-19 patients leave the hospital. The city has assigned 2 pagodas namely Kwemi and Linong in Soncha District and a hostel of the Danang Sports College in Lianqiu District as new quarantine centers for hosting close contacts of COVID-19 patients. It said the 200-bed Huavang Field Hospital, treating 155 COVID-19 patients, would be full in the coming days, and a new field hospital at Tianson Sports Center with 300 beds initially will be soon put into operation. According to the CDC, 21,030 people had been identified as close COVID-19 patients contact cases since the first COVID-19 patient of the new outbreak was found in the city on July 24. A total of 51,000 samples have been taken, of which 46,385 tested negative for SARS-CoV-2. The city has set up 1,600 response team to fight the pandemic. 4 COVID-19 patients were released from the city's lung disease hospital after treatment on Monday, while 18 other COVID patients had tested negative for SARS-CoV-2. A team of 37 doctors and nurses from Tua Tien Hui was sent to help Da Nang. Tua Tien Hui's province has launched online registration for tourists and residents from other provinces to get permission to enter Hue City. The province said tourists must fill in a health declaration, vehicle declaration, and purpose of travel for approval by local authorities. However, it said all people returning from COVID-19 hotspots in Da Nang, Quang Nam, and Quang Ngai must be isolated for 14 days before entering the city. In Quang Nam province, local public security officials in cooperation with authorities in Lang Son province deported 21 Chinese nationals who had illegally entered the province. The province said the 21 Chinese nationals had been quarantined for 2 weeks and all had tested negative with SARS-CoV-2 before leaving the province. This is Ralph Wandop Empire bringing you the latest updates here in Vietnam. We live in interesting times.
The Chinese embassy in Manila welcomed the Food and Drug Administration's approval of Lian Huaqing Wen, a China-manufactured red herbal medicine. In a statement, the embassy said that this marks an important progress in the entry of traditional Chinese medicine, or TCM, products into the Philippine market. The embassy also said the medicine, produced by Shijiazhuang Yiling Pharmaceutical Company Limited, is also approved in Hong Kong, Macau SAR, Brazil, Indonesia, Canada, Mozambique, Romania, Thailand, Ecuador, Singapore, and Laos PDR. Now, based on its FDA-issued Certificate of Product Registration, Lian Huaqing Wen helps remove heat toxin invasion of the lungs, including symptoms such as fever, aversion to cold, muscle soreness, and runny nose. The herb product is used to manage mild and moderate COVID-19 cases in China. However, there is no indication yet that it can be used as a COVID-19 treatment in the Philippines. When a team of Chinese doctors visited the Philippines to share their best experiences in managing the disease, one of their recommendations was the use of traditional medicine to treat COVID-19 patients. Meanwhile, the embassy also advised the public to purchase and consume authentic TCM produced by qualified pharmaceutical manufacturers. In today's other news, worldwide COVID infections is now more than 20 million after cases doubled over the past days. Meanwhile, Russia claimed victory in becoming the first country to approve a vaccine. However, with only 2 months of human testing and no large-scale trials yet, global health experts have sounded alarms. Still, Russian President Putin insisted it was safe for use.
Насколько мне известно, сегодня утром впервые в мире зарегистрирована вакцина против новой коронавирусной инфекции. Это более точно формирует стойкий антительный и клеточный иммунитет. Я это тоже хорошо очень знаю, поскольку одна из моих дочерей сделала себе такую прививку. Думаю, что в этом смысле она поучаствовала в эксперименте. Главное, конечно, чтобы в будущем мы смогли обеспечить безусловную безопасность применения этой вакцины и ее эффективность. Надеюсь, что это и будет.
The World Health Organization said it was in close contact with Russian health authorities, but that it was too soon for any stamp of approval. The WHO said pre-qualification of any vaccine includes the rigorous review and assessment of all the safety and efficacy data. In Berlin, a spokesman for the German Health Ministry told newspaper group R&D that, quote, there is no known data on the quality, efficacy, and safety of the Russian vaccine, adding that patient safety is of the highest priority. Now, top disease expert Dr. Anthony Fauci doubts that the Russian vaccine is safe and effective. Let's listen in.
So or more vaccines. So if we wanted to take the chance of hurting a lot of people or giving them something that doesn't work, we could start doing this, next week if we wanted to. But that's not the way it works. So I hope, but I haven't heard any evidence to make me feel that's the case. I hope that the Russians have actually definitively proven that the vaccine is safe and effective.
The World Health Organization's the World Health Organization in Geneva, Tariq Jaserevich, said it was in close contact with Russian health authorities, but that it was too soon for any WHO stamp of approval. Again, let's listen in.
I've closed the questions there.
Clear that every country has national regulatory agencies that approves the use of vaccines or medicines on its territory. WHO has in place the process of pre-qualification for vaccines, but also for the medicines. Countries often manufacturers ask to have a WHO pre-qualification because it is a sort of a stamp of a quality, and then to get this, as I said, there is a review and assessment of all required safety and efficacy data that are gathered through the clinical trials. So this WHO would do for any candidate vaccine. Thanks, please. Our what we call draft landscape of candidate vaccines is updated every week. So I don't know what day was updated the last time, but we try really to, there are more than 160 candidate vaccines and more than 20 in clinical trials, and we try to get this information as much as we can and trying really to accelerating the research and development. We have developed the guidance that includes product profiles for COVID-19 vaccine. We developed with a consultation with global experts. And Antonia, really, I can just say that we are in a close contact with the Russian health authorities, and discussions are ongoing with respect to possible WHO pre-qualification of the vaccine. But again, pre-qualification of any vaccine includes the rigorous review and assessment of all required safety and efficacy data. Regarding the phase, I really don't know. I would have to check.
Meanwhile, Mr. Kirill Dmitriev, the head of the Russian Sovereign Wealth Fund that helped develop the vaccine, said the doubts about the vaccines were part of coordinated and carefully orchestrated media attacks designed to discredit the country. He also said that 20 foreign countries have already pre-ordered over 1 billion doses. Take a look.
So we already received tentative interest and preliminary requests for 1 billion doses of Russian vaccine. We have also built partnership to produce the vaccine in 5 countries, and we now have production capability of 500 million vaccines that can be produced in the next 12 months. Important, we will not be producing vaccine only in Russia. We'll be producing vaccine with other countries in true partnership and really making vaccine available to the world, to countries who want it, to countries who need it. We believe that those issues should not be politicized, and we believe foreign scientists really understand the logic and science behind Russian vaccine. Lots of questions will be sort of answered.
Meanwhile, Indonesia has launched human trials of a Chinese-made coronavirus vaccine with some 1,600 volunteers slated to take part in the 6-month study. On Tuesday, Indonesia's President Joko Widodo toured a factory in Bandung City operated by state-owned pharmaceutical firm Bio Farma, where production began.
14 Januari kita sudah bisa produksi dan sekaligus juga kalau produksinya sudah siap langsung diberikan vaksinasinya kepada seluruh masyarakat di tanah air. Dan Agustus ini bisa memproduksi kurang lebih 100 juta vaksin, tetapi nantinya di akhir tahun 2020 di bulan Desember sudah meningkat menjadi 250 juta vaksin.
The vaccine candidate produced by Sinovac Biotech is among just a few in the world to enter phase 3 clinical trials or large-scale testing on humans, the last step before regulatory approval. The treatment, known as CoronaVac, is already being tested on 9,000 health workers in Brazil, the second hardest hit country in the coronavirus pandemic after the United States. Indonesia, the world's fourth most populous country, has been struggling to contain its mounting virus cases, with more than 127,000 confirmed infections and over 5,700 deaths. But the true scale of the public health crisis is believed to be much bigger, given the Southeast Asian nation's low testing rates. The governor of Indonesia's most populous province, West Java, was among the 1,620 volunteers slated to take part in clinical testing, which was set to wrap up in February. If the vaccine proves safe and effective, Indonesian officials said there were plans to produce up to 250 million doses for the sprawling archipelago of nearly 270 million, although they gave few details on the tentative rollout. And here are the latest numbers in the coronavirus cases in the ASEAN region. Take a look. Brunei, one new case recorded on August 7, still taking the total to 142. Cambodia saw a new 2 cases. August 12, taking the total to 268, 0 deaths. Indonesia saw 1,942 new cases, 79 deaths on August 12, bringing the total to 130,718 and 5,903 deaths. Laos, 1 new case on July 24, still taking the total is still 20, 0 deaths still. Now Malaysia has 11 new cases recorded on August 12, taking the total to 9,114 confirmed cases. Deaths is at 125. Myanmar recorded 1 new case in the country on August 9, still at 361. Now, the Philippines recorded 4,444 new cases and 93 deaths on August 12, bringing the total to 143,749. Deaths is at 2,404. Singapore has 55,395 confirmed cases with 27 deaths. Thailand has 3,356 confirmed cases with 58 deaths. And as of August 12, Vietnam's Ministry of Health confirmed a total of 866 cases of COVID-19. However, 399 of the affected patients have recovered and have been discharged from hospitals. Vietnam also recorded 17 deaths due to the pandemic. 18 now. The latest local cases have been reported from Da Nang, Quang Nam, and Quang Tri. And the global cases is 20,553,702, with global deaths of 748,416, according to the Johns Hopkins University data. ASEAN in Focus will be right back.
Hi, I'm Vina Morales. Abangan ang part 2 ng Tagisan ng Galing dito lang sa Net 25.
Events happen around us all the time, in our community, in our country, around the world. Events that affect people, move communities, or simply inspire us. Interesting events that people need to know. In these interesting times, we continue to be a competent partner in delivering news about these events. Fast, accurate, balanced, eagle news, because we live in interesting times.
A Malaysian ex-finance minister and his wife were hit with corruption charges, the latest episode in a crackdown against dissent since a scandal-plagued party returned to power. Lim Guang Eng was a minister for nearly 2 years until the reformist government he was in collapsed in February as a new pact led by former allies and political rivals took over. A former chief minister of the northern state of Penang from 2008 to 2018, Mr. Lim was charged with abusing his position to get 372,009 ringgit in gratification for his wife, Betty Chu, over a workers' dormitory project. Pleading not guilty at a court in the city of Butterworth on Tuesday, he said the accusations against him and Chu were baseless and politically motivated. He also said in a press conference broadcast live on social media, quote, "Dragging my wife, I think this is an act of political vengeance against me." He said, "I'm very upset. You want to go? Go for me. Why do you want to go for my wife?" Unquote. Chu, a lawyer, was hit with 3 money laundering charges, while a businesswoman was also charged with abetting Lim. Both women pleaded not guilty. Tuesday's was the 3rd such corruption charge that Mr. Lim faced in recent days. He was charged in Kuala Lumpur on Friday for soliciting a bribe over a $1.5 billion construction project and faced a second graft accusation in Penang on Monday for receiving a bribe over the same project. Mr. Lim, who also leads the Democratic Action Party, was a main member of the coalition that came to power at the 2018 elections, which unseated graft-riddled regime that governed Malaysia for 6 decades. And since then, authorities have launched probes into opposition politicians, journalists, and activists in what critics say is an effort to stifle dissent. Asian markets edged up on Thursday following a rally on Wall Street, but investors continued to fret over U.S. lawmakers' failure to find common ground on a new rescue package for their beleaguered economy. Take a look. All 3 main indexes in New York saw more sharp gains fueled by optimism over the U.S. economic recovery following a forecast-busting jump in inflation that indicated the key consumer sector was revving up again, while hopes for a vaccine and the wall of central bank cash were also providing support. The gains continued into Asia, with Tokyo up 1.9% as the recent drop in the safe haven yen boosted exporters, while Hong Kong added 0.2% and Shanghai gained 0.3%. Seoul, Taipei, and Singapore were all 0.7% higher, while Manila, Jakarta, and Wellington also pushed ahead. Kevin Karen at Washington Crossing said, and I quote, "The main force that's been driving markets the last few weeks has really been momentum." He said, "We've got a market that is focused on the good case outcome for the virus, and we've got a market that has taken a great deal of comfort in that fiscal policy is going to be there to support an economy through tough times," unquote. There was also some cheer about Joe Biden's choice of Kamala Harris as his running mate for November's election, with observers pointing out she is not considered anti-business and was a more center-ground politician than other options. But stalled talks in Washington continued to dampen the mood. The European Union reimposed customs duties on many of Cambodia's exports on Wednesday, suspending its trade arrangement over concerns about human rights. Trade Commissioner Phil Hogan stressed that while Brussels stands by Cambodia in battling the coronavirus, he said our continued support does not diminish the urgent need for Cambodia to respect human rights and labor rights. He said we have provided Cambodia with trade opportunities that let the country develop an export-oriented industry and gave jobs to thousands of Cambodians. Now, Cambodia has lost its access to EU's everything but arms trade arrangement for least developed countries, which will hit typical exports such as garments, footwear, and travel goods. Now, these products represent around 20% of Cambodia's exports to the EU and will now be subject to the general tariffs applied under World Trade Organization rules. Mr. Hogan said he would restore tariff-free access if the EU sees substantial improvement in Cambodia's human rights record. Cambodia's textile sector employs 700,000 people, and total trade between the two partners was 5.6 billion euros last year. Leaderless, social media savvy, and inspired by Hong Kong's young activists, Thailand's budding pro-democracy movement is intent on overhauling the government, rewriting the constitution, and even taking on a law that shields the monarchy. Take a look. Now, the kingdom has seen a decades-long spin cycle of coups and violent street protests led by well-funded veterans for or against the establishment. But the new generation of demonstrators says its fight is very different as they stage near-daily protests with crowds of up to several thousand angry young Thais. Premier Prayut Chan-o-cha is a former army chief and mastermind of the 2014 coup that brought military rule back to Thailand for 5 years. The 66-year-old became prime minister of a government packed with pro-military figures after an election last year. Demonstrators say the election was deeply flawed, held under an army-scripted constitution that allowed junta-picked senators to have a say in appointing the premier. Protesters are calling for a rewrite of the constitution and the dissolution of parliament. Protesters also have borrowed pop culture symbols, including songs from Japanese cartoon Hamtaro and the musical Les Miserables, as well as the three-fingered salute from the Hunger Games movies, and they have even staged Harry Potter-themed demonstrations. Now, with transport suspended because of a lockdown, a group of taxi drivers in the central city in Vietnam have offered free rides to pregnant women to hospitals. Vietnam News reported that a lot of local taxi drivers in Da Nang have their jobs suspended since the city started social distancing in late July. And as the epicenter of COVID-19 in Vietnam, it will continue social distancing until further notice. And drivers do not know when they can resume their work. So this project was initiated by Trang Ngoc Voa, 29-year-old driver, who learned that many pregnant women couldn't find cars to take them to the hospital when they go into labor. Now, a lot of local taxi drivers in Da Nang have their jobs suspended since late July, and Da Nang, as the epicenter, and with continuing social distancing until further notice, drivers said they don't know when they can resume work, so the team has more than 60 drivers now. And when pregnant women need help, they just need to pick up the phone and call the hotline. The Philippine Navy and the Republic of Korea Navy discussed defense efforts against the ongoing coronavirus disease pandemic while keeping operational capabilities on track in their first virtual Navy-to-Navy talks on Wednesday. Take a look. Now, this year's talks focus on the sharing of best practices between the two navies in defense against the dreaded COVID-19 global pandemic while maintaining maritime operational capability, according to Philippine Navy Public Affairs Officer Lieutenant Commander Maria Cristina Rojas in a statement. The PN side, or the Philippine Navy side, was headed by Captain Jemson V. de Guzman, Assistant Chief of Naval Staff for Operations, while the ROKN was represented by Captain Lee Han Dong, head of the ROKN's International Cooperational Branch. Despite the current pandemic, Rojas said both navies proceeded with the talks, albeit virtually, taking it as an opportunity to explore technologies to continue and deepen their bilateral relationship and diplomatic ties. This first ever NT-NT between the navies of the Philippines and South Korea was held under the terms of reference, which they signed in 2019. One of the specifics under the TOR is the conduct of biennial Navy talks, which would serve as a forum for regular dialogue and information exchange between the two navies to discuss matters of common importance and promote mutual interests. Naval Station Jose Andrada, Manila, BRP Jose Rizal crossed the International Dateline, or IDL, on August 10. And take a look. This was while transiting the Pacific Ocean bound for the RIM, or the Rim of the Pacific 2020 or RIMPAC 20 exercise in Hawaii, marking her first crossing the line ceremony in celebration of the time-honored naval tradition. The ceremony took place with the members of the Naval Task Group, or NTG 80.5 personnel who have not yet experienced the said ceremony, otherwise known as the Domain of the Golden Dragon near the Midway Island, federal state of Micronesia. Crossing the line ceremonies were adopted by the Philippine Navy as its ships started overseas deployments. It ensures that said rites will be enjoyable, memorable, and safe among the polywogs or personnel who have not crossed the line. The said ceremony boosts the morale and fosters a sense of belongingness among sailors and aviators. Amid the risk of a community outbreak of the COVID-19, the Philippine Embassy and the Polo continue to reach out to our OFWs. Here's Greg Besa reporting from New Zealand.
Wellington region. As the government intensifies its efforts to prevent or contain any possible community outbreak of COVID-19 in New Zealand, the Philippine Embassy and the Philippine Overseas Labor Office have been reaching out to hundreds of overseas Filipino workers in different parts of the country. As the economic impact of lockdown and the continuing threat of coronavirus have resulted to thousands of job displacements in New Zealand, the Philippine Embassy and the Philippine Overseas Labor Office are visiting different places in the country to conduct meetings and consultations with the Filipino migrant workers. Other than knowing their well-being and employment status, the Philippine Embassy and Polo, with partnership of Filipino community organizations, are also distributing food parcels to the workers. After visiting 6 cities, Philippine Ambassador Jesus Domingo and Labor Attaché Angel Burha Jr. met the overseas Filipino workers in Paraparaumu, Kapiti Coast, Wellington region to know firsthand their conditions, answer any of their queries, and even update them on the Philippine government efforts in helping the migrant workers abroad, especially those being adversely affected by the pandemic. Much as Ambassador Domingo and Labor Attaché Burha Jr. emphasized the importance of visiting and meeting with the Filipino workers as a manifestation of the Philippine government's concern for them, the employer who was kind enough to host the gathering expressed his appreciation to the Filipino diplomatic officials for reaching out to the workers.
We're here to distribute food packs to our kababayan. Itong ang outreach natin sa mga OFWs here in New Zealand who have been facing difficulties because of the COVID-19 situation. So the number one priority, utos ni President Rodrigo Duterte, is to all out assist our workers, our kababayan in their various needs.
We're doing this as part of our government's effort to reach out to all the workers who had been affected by the COVID pandemic all throughout the world. And here in New Zealand, we are doing this as part of the worksite visitations that the Embassy and Polo jointly conducts for purposes of making the workers, our workers, feel that they're never forgotten by our government. In fact, our government, even in this very difficult situation, continues to reach out and care for our Filipino workers who are most important in our country's economy.
You guys being able to reach out to our guys here today, we really, as I mentioned earlier, we really appreciate what our guys do. They work very hard. They work long hours, and they always do it with a smile on their face. They're always very, very respectful, and we appreciate that. They're great people, and we've got lots of work for them going forward. So thanks again for coming.
After the meeting and consultation, Marcelo Esperas of the Knights of Rizal Wellington chapter assisted the Philippine Ambassador and Labor Attaché, along with the management of the Personal Touch Limited, in distributing food parcels to the workers who are grateful upon receiving such.
Kami po ay lubos na nagpapasalamat sa ating ambassador nandito sa New Zealand na gumagabay sa amin at tumutulong sa bawat isa sa amin. Nagpapasalamat po din po ang bawat isa sa amin sa ating labor attaché na gumagabay sa bawat pangangailangan ng bawat isang Pilipino dito sa New Zealand.
Maraming salamat po sa ating Philippine Ambassador sa inyong pagbisita at sa ating labor attaché dito po. At sa kunting ayuda na aming natanggap, maraming salamat po sa inyo.
Aside from visiting the overseas Filipino workers across the country, the Philippine Embassy is also facilitating the repatriation flight of Filipino nationals who were affected by the closure of New Zealand border. On 24th July of this year, 255 Filipinos availed the second repatriation flight to the Philippines, including those workers who were laid off from their jobs as their companies suffered substantial losses due to the COVID-19 pandemic. From Paraparaumo, Capiticos, New Zealand, this is Greg Besa. We live in interesting times.
Thank you, Greg. ASEAN in Focus. We'll be right back.
Hello po. Ako po si Marco Sison. Abangan po natin ang part 2 ng Tagisan ng Galing dito lang sa Net 25.
Accurate and fair reporting. Not only from Batanes to Tawi-Tawi, but also abroad. Detailed and timely stories relevant to people all over the world. Catch all of these at Net25. Your reliable source of news, entertainment, and technology updates.
Bukas na po ang auditions para sa Tagisan ng Galing Part 2. Mag-audition na po kayo sapagkat mahigit sa 7 million pesos ang nag-aantay na papremyo sa kategorya ng sayawan at kantahan. Opo, Tagisan ng Galing Part 2. Dito lamang po yan sa Net 25.
Singapore began destroying 9 tons of seized ivory on Tuesday, the largest such action of globally in recent years, including contraband tusks that came from more than 300 African elephants. Take a look. The destruction by an industrial rock crusher was held on the eve of World Elephant Day. It aims to prevent the items from re-entering the market and disrupt the global supply chain of illegally traded ivory, according to Singapore's National Parks Board. Now, a spokeswoman for the board said it would take 3 to 5 days for all of the ivory seized between 2014 and 2019 to be crushed, after which the fragments will be incinerated. This ivory crushing event, the largest globally in recent years, demonstrates Singapore's strong determination and commitment to combat the illegal trade in wildlife, the board said in a statement. The items include 8.8 tons of ivory seized last year in Singapore's biggest haul, worth 17.6 million Singapore dollars. Now, Singapore also Tuesday launched a Center for Wildlife Forensics to identify and analyze specimens involved in the illegal wildlife trade. Now, by using DNA analysis and other methods to study the specimens, the center can determine whether the items were poached from, a useful tool in the fight against illegal wildlife trade. Elephant ivory is coveted because it can be fashioned into items like combs, pendants, and other exotic jewelry. The global trade in elephant ivory, with rare exceptions, has been outlawed since 1989 after the population of the African animals dropped from millions in the mid-20th century to about 600,000 by the end of the 1980s. And that is the latest news in the Southeast Asian nations. Stay updated about the ASEAN region. I'm Alma Angeles. We live in interesting times.
The biggest